Dear colleagues, political leaders and market partners, with the Green Deal, Europe has defined the ambition to be the first climate-neutral continent by 2050. This will shape our economies and lives for the foreseeable future. It will involve a large number of unparalleled and simultaneous changes across all parts of the energy sector, including, for example, large-scale investment in renewables, in grids, and in innovation, in particular technologies like hydrogen. And if this were not enough, it needs to happen at a time when Europe and the world is trying to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Given these changes, I feel truly privileged to support WindEnergy 2020 as one of its ambassadors. Together with leading industry experts, we will highlight and discuss the policy efforts needed to deliver the clean energy transition. And I firmly believe that we, as individuals, as corporations and as governments, together not only have the capacity but also the accountability to take decisive actions to put the world on a net zero path. This commitment is key, so let's take a look at one company example.
Every time has its energy. Times are changing. Society is changing, and we are changing too. We are now one of the world's largest power producers in wind and solar energy. Our clear goal is to be 100% carbon neutral by 2040. Welcome to the renewable age. We are the new RWE.
We saw Europe's man on the moon moment when the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, tabled the Green Deal last year. Net zero by 2050, a 55% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, which obviously has to lead to a much higher renewables share in energy. We hear it will be around 39% to be on track to net zero. Lately, the European Commission also tabled the offshore strategy, which aims at 300 gigawatt offshore wind and 40 gigawatt ocean energy by 2050. And thereby offshore wind is said to be the #1 source of electricity by 2040. And it means a 25-fold increase compared to the 12 gigawatt installed today. Now looking ahead to 2021 and the years to come, we need to jointly work on the key policy measures to help scale renewables build out. So what's my key message number 1? We need a roadmap including binding renewables build-out targets for 2030, 2040 and 2050 on EU level and on the level of the member states. Good news is that some European member states have already defined 2030 targets. For instance, Netherlands with an 11 gigawatt offshore target for 2030. Poland will have an offshore target of around 6 gigawatt until 2030, coming from 0. And more than 50 gigawatt onshore in Spain is quite impressive. But we need to complete this picture and define a reliable roadmap for 2040 as well. So why is that important? We are talking nothing less than a fundamental change of our energy system. And this will require massive investments in offshore and onshore grids, in ports, in the supply chain. In order to plan and execute this massive infrastructure programs, we need binding targets in all member states, as well as on the level of the European Union, also for 2040. The European Recovery Plan can help support these necessary infrastructure investments, and member states should reflect this in their national recovery and resilience plans. We will not achieve our net zero target by solely thinking in national borders. We need to unleash the full potential of Europe's natural resources by working multinational. And my second policy ask is, make renewables accessible for all. Let us foster cross-border collaboration to allow for economies of scale and value creation in all member states. Not all member states are likely to contribute to the RES share that would be necessary, and this is due to various reasons. Some member states simply do not have a coast and therefore cannot apply offshore wind. There are challenges to upgrade the grid. There's public opposition or simply higher cost. And therefore, the EU has to introduce mechanisms to support cross-border cooperation in renewable development. For example, the so-called hybrid offshore wind farms, which are being connected to 2 or more countries in the respective sea basin, like the Baltic Sea or the North Sea. These hybrid offshore projects will play an important role as they reduce costs, save space, and improve the energy flows between countries. Consequently, maritime spatial plans should stronger focus on regional offshore wind development and less on national borders. 7 gigawatt of these offshore hybrids are already in the pipeline. Therefore, we urge policymakers to implement the enabling framework as soon as possible. Also, the new renewables financing mechanism can be a great enabler for cross-border collaboration. So we come from OTC deals between member states to a central European-wide platform. We are looking forward to the concrete setup of these platforms to foster cooperation and hope for a clear and transparent framework in 2021. I talked about the importance of clear and long-term targets on European level and on the member state level, as well as the need for collaboration across national boundaries. These are the foundation for the energy transition to happen. But how about ensuring funding of the renewables build-out we need? How do we accomplish that? My third policy ask is we need contracts for difference across Europe as a best practice instrument for financing the massive renewables build-out. To ensure that the huge investments in renewables will be achieved, we need the right financing instruments to accomplish 2 things in particular: ensure the lowest cost of electricity for society and to attract investors for Europe, as we are competing for private sector funding with the rest of the world. So let's have a look at how this could be accomplished.
What will life be like 30 years from now? What will our energy supply system look like? How can we replace fossil fuel with green electricity? Exciting questions that no one can answer with certainty. One goal has already been set. Europe aims to become the first carbon-neutral continent by 2050. EU states have agreed an increase in the share of renewables in electricity, heat and transport to 32% by 2030. But we have to up the ante once more if we want to implement the Green Deal and stay on track for carbon neutrality. A minimum renewables quota of 38% would have to be reached by 2030. To hit this target, we must build a slew of onshore and offshore wind farms, as well as ground-mounted PV arrays in the years ahead. Europe plans to increase its offshore wind capacity from 18,000 megawatts at present to at least 400,000 megawatts by 2050. The triple-digit billion euro investments needed to this end will only be made if the economic conditions attract investors. They must also appeal to consumers who expect low electricity prices and an affordable expansion of renewable energy. Europe's renewables expansion is currently promoted by various models. In certain member states, such as Germany, auctions are held that enable investments without secured prices, whereas in the Netherlands, secured prices are a prerequisite. However, this approach is already reaching the limits of investors and consumers, above all in the capital-intensive construction of offshore wind farms. But why is that the case? Some investors were willing to build assets without any subsidy whatsoever by submitting zero-subsidy bids. One reason for this was that they expected electricity prices to rise. However, the long-term electricity price trend has become rather uncertain and strongly dependent on political landmark decisions, for example, on further electrification. The worst-case scenario resulting from all too optimistic electricity price assumptions forming the basis for their bids, winner's curse, is the inability to implement large-scale offshore wind projects, at times of gigawatt dimensions. This danger should be avoided at all cost when it comes to massive expansion goals in order to enable Europe to achieve its ambitious goals. Europe needs an improved level playing field and the utmost transparency in order to be able to set up the best possible system in and for Europe. An attractive alternative for investors and consumers are contracts for difference, or CFDs for short. And this is how CFDs work. An auction for the construction of an offshore wind farm is conducted. The nod goes to the company with the lowest costs, translating into the lowest bid price. If the electricity price on the exchange is lower once the wind farm is commissioned, the hedge payments made to the operator offset the difference to the fixed bid price. This gives investors the guarantee that falling electricity prices will not cause their project to become unprofitable. If the electricity price exceeds the bid price, the operator pays the additional income to the electricity customers. This protects electricity customers from rising electricity prices. Contracts for difference benefit both operators and electricity customers. Income is largely secured for the investors for the duration of the subsidy. This reduces their exposure to risk, makes planning easier, and thus increases the likelihood of the projects needed to achieve the ambitious climate goals being implemented. As finance costs drop to boot, so do the wind power generation costs, and in turn the bids, which benefits the general public. The CFD model is becoming increasingly prevalent, with offshore CFD auctions already being planned in Poland, Denmark, Lithuania, and Ireland. They have already proved effective in both France and the UK. The British government actually anticipates no longer having to pay subsidies. They thus speak of zero-subsidy contracts for difference. The sector's widespread consensus is that CFDs enable the ambitious renewable energy expansion goals, in particular for offshore wind, to be achieved at very affordable costs, in turn helping Europe to become carbon neutral by 2050.
So the advantages of a two-sided CFD are evident. First, the net cost to government and society are the lowest possible, as shown, for instance, by our offshore wind project Sophia in the UK. Second, the revenue stability, which is especially important during current crisis times when merchant projects are not viable anymore, and CFDs will help accelerating the renewables build-out and therefore also safeguard jobs. Third, the stability makes CFDs very attractive for international investors. We are competing with the rest of the world, and we should strive to make Europe as attractive as possible. Fourth, CFDs can happily coexist with corporate renewable PPAs. PPAs are a very useful additional form of revenue stability, though likely not enough on their own, looking at the ambitious targets we have defined for Europe. Therefore, I actively encourage all member states to use two-sided CFDs as a preferred auction design model. Two-sided CFDs have to be considered a revenue stabilization mechanism and not a subsidy. We talked a lot about the transformation of the electricity system, but what about sector coupling, and in particular hard-to-electrify sectors? Hydrogen is key to a successful energy transition, and this is my key message number 4. With Europe's net zero target, it is clear that also hard-to-abate sectors need to decarbonize. We need to go beyond electricity and have carbon-free fuels. That is the role of hydrogen. According to the World Energy Council, it could be possible to create a global hydrogen market with an annual volume of around 270 million tons by 2050. And as a frame of reference, if this were to only include green hydrogen, then this would essentially need all the currently installed renewable capacity globally.
When it comes to the energy transition, hydrogen can be a real game changer. Produced in a climate-neutral way, it can significantly reduce CO2 emissions far beyond the electricity sector. This is why it plays a key role in decarbonizing the industry and making it less dependent on fossil fuels, primarily by using renewable energies. The European Union and many countries, such as Germany, France, and the Netherlands, have already announced or presented ambitious hydrogen strategies. The hydrogen strategy of the European Commission foresees the ramping up of electrolyzer capacities very soon. Already by the end of 2024, 6 gigawatts of electrolyzers shall be installed in Europe that shall produce up to 1 million tons of purely renewable hydrogen. By 2030, the capacity should reach at least 40 gigawatts of renewable hydrogen electrolyzers, converting up to 333 terawatt-hours of renewable electricity to 10 million tons of renewable gas.
The advantages of hydrogen are: there are no CO2 emissions when it combusted, it can be transported in pipelines, and third, it can be stored for a long time, for example in salt caverns.
To avoid CO2 emission also in production, we need to focus on green hydrogen. When it comes to the energy transition, it will play a key role.
Here at RWE, we have recognized the great potential of green hydrogen. Using renewable electricity from wind farms, solar parks or run-of-river plants, in so-called power-to-gas plants, to produce green hydrogen. The technology used is water electrolysis. It is a mature technology and commercially available in small scale.
Industry could use climate-neutral hydrogen, for example, as a raw material in refineries or for the production of steel. It can also be converted into synthetic fuels. Although they have the same features as kerosene or diesel, they are carbon neutral. For the hydrogen economy to be able to gain any traction, we will need framework conditions to ensure H2 becomes the game changer we are looking for to ensure a successful energy transition. Hydrogen is set to be an important market, and RWE intends to become a key player, as its starting position is especially strong. RWE is optimally positioned along the entire green hydrogen value chain. As one of the world's leading suppliers of renewables, RWE is uniquely positioned to supply the clean electricity necessary to produce H2. RWE has extensive know-how in producing green hydrogen with its own electrolyzers and its own gas storage facilities for intermediate storage. RWE is extremely experienced in energy trading and can also supply hydrogen to industrial customers in line with their requirements. And in the long term, RWE's own gas-fired power plants are also potential green hydrogen buyers.
We are involved in several hydrogen projects along the whole value chain. These reflect the broad experiences in our company. They are located in Germany, the Netherlands and UK. To drive the hydrogen economy, we are also active in several national and European hydrogen initiatives. After all, we are very keen to play a key role in the hydrogen economy.
This commitment could not be better aligned with the new RWE strategy: consistent expansion of renewables, strong innovative influence, an enthusiastic entry into the hydrogen technology market, and carbon neutral by 2040. RWE is using numerous projects to propel the hydrogen economy. Two main examples are Aquaventus in Germany and Eems Hydrogen in the Netherlands. A project known as Aquaventus is also planning on using wind power in the future. The difference is, the electrolysis plants are to be installed directly at sea, off the island of Heligoland.
We are part of the Aquaventus initiative. Here, we and our partners are investigating ways to produce hydrogen offshore, directly at sea. The island of Helgoland shall be the central hub for the green hydrogen. A central pipeline shall transport the green hydrogen to the mainland. In the first sub-project, we are investigating the possibility to produce the hydrogen directly at the bottom of the wind turbines. For this, initially, 2 40 megawatts turbines shall be implemented in front of Helgoland.
Although Eemshaven Power Station in the Netherlands is also located on the North Sea coast, the intended electrolysis plant will be fed with electricity from an onshore wind farm. The project name is Eems Hydrogen.
In our project Eems Hydrogen in the Netherlands, we are planning to install a 50 megawatt electrolyzer at our power station in Eemshaven. The cool thing is that here the electrolyzer is directly connected to one of the largest onshore wind farms in the Netherlands, and that is the RWE wind farm Wester Eems. The produced green hydrogen shall be transported via pipelines of the gas grid operator Gasunie to industries nearby.
Australia, for example, is well positioned for the production of hydrogen, thanks to the vast expanses of land available and the high solar radiation. This is why RWE has joined the High Supply Project Group, headed by BDI and Akatech, which aims to investigate the possibilities of a German-Australian hydrogen partnership. As you can see from the examples, RWE is taking a multifaceted approach to promoting hydrogen as an energy carrier. New technologies create solutions and allow for social progress, so that one day factories can manufacture, aircraft can fly, and ships can sail without emitting any carbon at all.
So what is our point of departure? The clean hydrogen industry is currently tiny and costs are high. There's a big potential for costs to fall, but the use of hydrogen needs to be scaled up. For hydrogen to gain use, therefore, policy is absolutely critical. And this needs coordination across governments, frameworks for private investments, and the rollout of subsidies over the next decade. Carbon contracts for difference should be considered to drive down costs, attract investments, and drive scale. We should also strive for dedicated hydrogen targets by member states to support the European hydrogen strategy. We need a stable and effective definition of the green character of hydrogen to give security to all involved players. And finally, we need to reflect hydrogen in the renewables build-out targets as it comes on top of existing renewables targets. And last point, we should ensure to use hydrogen primarily in the hard-to-electrify sectors. Talking about needs and asks, commitment is absolutely vital. So dear all, we are in the midst of unprecedented times. If we look around the world, it is evident that the mental models regarding how we live, how we work, and how we do business are changing. Rightfully so, I would say. Let us stay committed, as individuals, as corporations, and as governments, to make Europe and the rest of the world climate neutral. Thank you very much for listening. With our suggestions on policy priorities, we hope to set the right guardrails. And please share your thoughts and further ideas with us, and do get in touch. Stay healthy and all the best.
We made a fresh start. Today we're one of the leading players in the global renewable energy market. With wind farms, solar parks and battery storage systems around the world. We're investing €5 billion in renewables up until 2022. Towards a sustainable future. Towards carbon neutrality by 2040. To be the best energy company that we can be. The new RWE, our energy for a sustainable life.